me, please. I can't open it. My heart, I can't breathe. They're coming. You have to open the gate now. Please, hurry.
It's all right, Mom. Don't you worry. We're not going anywhere.
They say you can't fight City Hall. But nobody warned me about fighting a HOA board president who thinks she's running a small dictatorship from her beige McMansion in suburban Phoenix. Her name is Patricia Cunningham, and 3 weeks ago, she had my elderly mother's medication delivery blocked at the gate because the pharmacy van wasn't on the approved vendor list. Mom's 78 years old with a heart condition. The meds were time-sensitive. Patricia didn't care. She just smiled, adjusted her designer sunglasses, and said the rules exist for everyone's protection. That's when I knew this woman wasn't just difficult, she was dangerous. My name is Marcus Webb. I'm 35, and I work as a civil engineer for the city of Phoenix. I never thought my job designing drainage systems would prepare me for what came next, but life has a funny way of equipping you for battles you never saw coming. I moved back to Arizona 6 months ago after my divorce finalized in Seattle. My mom had been living alone in Desert Springs Estates since Dad passed in 2022, and she needed help. The community looked perfect on paper. Gated entry, palm-lined streets, Spanish-style homes with red tile roofs baking under that relentless Arizona sun. What the real estate agent didn't mention was that Desert Springs had fallen under the iron grip of Patricia Cunningham's HOA regime 2 years prior. Patricia, 53, former pharmaceutical sales rep turned full-time neighborhood tyrant, ran the association like a Fortune 500 CEO if that CEO had unlimited power, zero accountability, and a personal vendetta against anyone who questioned her authority. She lived in the largest house on Saguaro Ridge Drive, a 4,200 square foot monument to beige, stucco, and manufactured superiority, complete with a 3-car garage and a front yard so aggressively manicured it looked photoshopped. I first met Patricia the week I moved in, August 2024. I was unloading boxes when she appeared at the end of Mom's driveway like she'd materialized from the heat shimmer. Khaki capris, crisp white polo with a Desert Springs logo embroidered over her heart, clipboard clutched like a religious text. "You must be Helen's son," she announced, not asked. Her voice had that artificial sweetness that made my teeth ache. "Marcus," I replied, setting down a box marked kitchen. "I'm Patricia Cunningham, HOA president. Welcome to the community." She handed me a folder so thick it could have been a doctoral thesis. "Community guidelines," she explained. "Trash pickup schedules, approved paint colors, landscaping requirements, parking regulations, and guest policies. Everything you need to maintain our standards." I flipped through it. 47 pages of rules governing everything from mailbox height to the exact shade of brown allowed on front doors. "This is thorough," I said diplomatically. Patricia's smile sharpened. "We take pride in our community appearance. You'll find we're very serious about compliance." Over the next few months, I learned just how serious Mrs. Rodriguez, 3 houses down, got fined $500 because her recycling bin was visible from the street on a non-collection day. The Johnsons received a violation notice because their Halloween decorations stayed up until November. Second, the rules specified removal by November 1st at midnight. A young couple with twin toddlers were threatened with daily fines because their kids' sidewalk chalk drawings constituted unapproved exterior decoration. But the worst part? Patricia seemed to enjoy it. She'd patrol the streets in her white Lexus SUV like a prison warden, hunting for violations with the enthusiasm most people reserve for hobbies. Mom tried to stay under the radar, but even she wasn't immune. In October, Patricia cited her for having non-conforming desert landscaping. The native plants and cacti Dad had carefully cultivated over 15 years didn't match the HOA's approved list. Never mind that native plants use 75% less water in a state facing historic drought. Patricia wanted uniform, thirsty Bermuda grass, and imported oleander bushes like everyone else. It's about neighborhood consistency. Patricia explained during her impromptu inspection of Mom's front yard, her heels sinking into the gravel as she pointed at a perfectly healthy barrel cactus. This looks too rustic. It's a cactus, I said, genuinely confused. In Arizona. It's not on the approved plant schedule. She tapped her clipboard. You have 30 days to replace it with conforming vegetation, or we begin assessing daily fines. Mom looked like she might cry. These plants were Dad's legacy. I put my arm around her shoulders. We'll figure it out, I told her, though I had no idea how. That night, I started reading the HOA bylaws, all 247 pages of them. What I found made my blood pressure spike. The rules had been rewritten extensively in late 2022, just after Patricia took over as president. Violations that once carried warnings now meant immediate fines. The board had expanded from 5 members to 7, all hand-picked by Patricia. Meeting minutes showed decisions made without proper quorum. Funds were being spent on community improvements, with zero transparency about what those improvements were. And here's the kicker. According to Arizona HOA law, major bylaw changes required a 2/3 vote of all homeowners. The 2022 changes, approved by 17 people at a meeting that 63 residents attended, with no formal vote count recorded. I brought this up at the December HOA meeting, held in the community clubhouse, a beige building that matched the beige houses under the beige Arizona sky. About 40 residents showed up, most elderly, all looking vaguely defeated. Patricia sat at the head table, flanked by her board members, all wearing matching Desert Springs polo shirts like a cult uniform. When the floor opened for questions, I stood. I've been reviewing the 2022 bylaw amendments. I began. According to state law, major changes require a 2/3 majority vote of all homeowners, not just meeting attendees. Can you provide documentation of that vote? The room went silent. Patricia's smile didn't waver, but something cold flickered in her eyes. The vote was properly conducted and recorded, she said smoothly. If you'd like to review the minutes, they're available by appointment. I've read the minutes. They don't show a formal vote count. Then I suggest you read them more carefully. She moved to the next agenda item like I'd never spoken. After the meeting, an older man named Carl approached me in the parking lot. Don't push her, he warned quietly. She makes life hell for anyone who challenges her. Someone needs to, I said. Carl shook his head. We tried. 2 years ago, before you moved here, a group of us questioned her financial management. She hit every single one of us with violation notices for things we'd been doing for years without issue. Pool equipment visible from the alley. Garden hoses not properly stored. Cars parked 2 inches over the driveway edge. She buried us in fines until we backed off. That's extortion. That's Patricia. He walked away, shoulders slumped, and I stood alone under the parking lot lights, realizing I'd just painted a target on my back. The retaliation started within a week. First came a notice about Mom's porch light. Apparently, it was 2.3 watts brighter than the approved maximum. Then our house number plaque was cited for being non-standard font. Then the gate code. Patricia had every homeowner's gate access linked to their compliance status. One morning, Mom's code simply stopped working. She was stranded at the entrance for 40 minutes, morning sun beating down, until a neighbor let her in. When I called the HOA office, the response was clinical. Access codes are automatically suspended pending violation resolution. What violations? I demanded. Everything's been fixed. Not according to our records, the office manager said. You can discuss it with Mrs. Cunningham at her next office hours. Office hours were Thursday afternoons, 2 to 4 p.m., when most working people couldn't attend. Convenient. I took a half day off work. Patricia's office was actually a converted bedroom in her home, decorated like a corporate executive suite. Mahogany desk, leather chairs, framed certificates of meaningless HOA achievement awards on the walls. She gestured for me to sit like she was doing me a favor. Marcus, she began, folding her hands on the desk. I understand you're frustrated, but rules exist for everyone's protection. My mother is 78 with a heart condition. You locked her out of her own neighborhood. The gate code policy is clearly stated in section 14.7 of the bylaws. This isn't about bylaws. This is retaliation because I asked questions at the meeting. Patricia's expression didn't change. That's a serious accusation. It's a serious problem. She leaned back, studying me like I was something stuck to her shoe. You know what your problem is, Marcus? You think rules don't apply to you. You think because you're an engineer, because you're educated, you can waltz into an established community and critique how we do things. I think holding people accountable isn't a crime. Neither is enforcing community standards. She opened a drawer and pulled out a file. My file, apparently. Let's see. Vehicle parked facing the wrong direction on the street. Trash bins visible after 9 a.m. on collection day. Outdoor furniture left on the driveway overnight during your move-in. Every item was technically true but absurdly petty. These are your priorities? I asked. While drainage systems are failing and common area landscaping is dying from neglect? Her jaw tightened. How I allocate community resources is board business, not yours. Actually, according to Arizona revised statutes, homeowners have the right to review financial records and meeting minutes. By appointment and with proper notice, which I'm requesting now, denied. The board meets in executive session to review such requests. We'll let you know our decision in 30 days. That's when I realized this wasn't just about following rules. Patricia had built herself a kingdom, and she'd defend it by any means necessary. I left her office furious, but not defeated. That night, I did what any millennial would do. I started a Facebook group. Desert Springs HOA Accountability went live on January 15th, 2025. Within 48 hours, 127 residents had joined. The stories came flooding in. Pictures of $1,200 fines for lawn brown spots during water restrictions. Emails threatening legal action over garage door trim paint that was allegedly 3% off the approved color code. A veteran who'd been cited for displaying an American flag that was 2 inches larger than regulations allowed on Veterans Day. One woman, Sarah Chen, shared security camera footage of Patricia personally measuring the height of her mailbox with a tape measure and ruler, then comparing it to printed specifications. The mailbox was exactly regulation height. Patricia stood there for 3 minutes, trying different angles before finally leaving without issuing a violation. It would have been funny if it wasn't so disturbing. But the group did more than vent it organized. We discovered Patricia had spent $43,000 in HOA funds on landscaping improvements for the community entrance, work that was never done. She'd hired her brother-in-law's property management company at rates 40% above market average. She'd approved a $15,000 security upgrade that consisted of 3 decorative cameras that weren't even functional. I compiled everything into a formal complaint and submitted it to the Arizona Department of Real Estate, which oversees HOA compliance. I also contacted a lawyer named Veronica Mills, who specialized in HOA disputes. Veronica was a bulldog in a pantsuit, early 52nds, sharp as broken glass, with a reputation for taking down corrupt boards. You've got a strong case, she told me during our first consultation in her downtown Phoenix office, but understand, people like Patricia don't go down easy. She'll fight, and she'll fight dirty. She already is, I said, showing her the gate code suspension and the escalating violation notices. Veronica nodded. That's intimidation, and it's illegal. Arizona law prohibits HOAs from using selective enforcement as retaliation. We can use this. How long will it take? Depends on whether she's smart enough to settle or stupid enough to fight. My money's on stupid. She was right. When Patricia received the demand letter outlining our complaints and requesting mediation, her response wasn't conciliatory, it was nuclear. 3 days later, every member of my Facebook group received simultaneous violation notices. Suddenly, 38 households were being cited for things ranging from mailbox color fading to visible irrigation timers to unapproved door wreaths. The fines totaled over $67,000. Collectively, Patricia had weaponized the entire HOA enforcement system. Several group members panicked and quit immediately. "I can't afford these fines," one wrote in her resignation message. "I'm sorry, but I have to protect my family." I understood, but it was exactly what Patricia wanted, divide and conquer. But others got angry, really angry. A retired accountant named Donald Marsh volunteered to audit the HOA finances. A former paralegal named Linda Jeffries started compiling every communication from Patricia that constituted harassment. A professor from ASU named Dr. Ramesh Patel organized a petition demanding a special election to recall the entire board. We weren't a Facebook group anymore, we were a movement. And Patricia clearly noticed, because that's when things got dangerous. On February 3rd, 2025, I woke up to find all 4 of my truck tires slashed. Deep cuts, clearly deliberate. The security camera I'd installed after the gate code incident had mysteriously stopped recording at 2:47 a.m., right when my Wi-Fi went down. Coincidence? I filed a police report, though I had no proof. 2 days later, someone filed an anonymous complaint with the city claiming I was running an illegal business from Mom's house. Code enforcement showed up unannounced, demanding to inspect the premises. I proved it was bogus, but the harassment was escalating. Then came the medication incident that changed everything. Mom's pharmacy, Desert Valley Drugs on Camelback Road, a local place she'd trusted for 12 years, where the pharmacist knew her by name and her medication history by heart, sent their delivery van to drop off her heart medication. This wasn't just any prescription. These were beta blockers and ACE inhibitors, time-sensitive medications that managed the atrial fibrillation she developed after Dad passed. The kind of stuff that can't just sit baking in a delivery van under the Arizona sun, where temperatures inside a vehicle can hit 150 degrees by noon. The van arrived at the Desert Springs gate at exactly 10:23 a.m. on February 12, 2025. The driver, a guy named Miguel who'd been doing this route for 6 years, punched in the pharmacy's vendor code at the call box. Nothing happened. He tried again. Still nothing. Confused, Miguel pressed the intercom button to speak with the gate guard. Jorge answered, and Miguel could hear the stress in his voice immediately. "I've got a medication delivery for Helen Webb at 4847 Ocotillo Lane," Miguel said. "My code isn't working." There was a long pause. Then Jorge's voice came back, careful and apologetic. "Sir, I'm sorry, but I'm showing that Desert Valley Drugs was removed from the approved vendor list this morning. You'll need to contact the HOA office to apply for reinstatement." Miguel blinked at the call box like it had just spoken in ancient Greek. "What? I've been delivering here for 6 years. What happened?" "I don't have that information, sir. You'll need to speak with Mrs. Cunningham's office." Miguel explained that the medication was time-sensitive, that his patient was elderly and waiting, that this had never been an issue before. Jorge repeated, sounding more strained, that his hands were tied. He'd been given explicit instructions that morning, a printed memo from Patricia herself, that certain vendors were being reviewed for compliance and temporarily suspended. Desert Valley Drugs was on the list. Miguel asked to speak with a supervisor. Jorge said he was the supervisor on duty. Miguel asked for Patricia's direct number. Jorge said she was unavailable and wouldn't take calls about vendor issues. They had to be submitted in writing via the HOA website's contact form, which was reviewed within 3 to 5 business days. By now, it was 10:37 a.m. The temperature was climbing toward 84 degrees, and Miguel had 3 more deliveries on his route. He called his dispatcher to explain the situation. His dispatcher called the HOA office, got voicemail, left a message marked urgent, called back 4 more times. Every single one went to voicemail. Meanwhile, Mom's medication sat in the van every minute, bringing it closer to the temperature threshold where its effectiveness would be compromised. I was at work, 3 floors deep in City Hall, reviewing drainage plans for a new development near South Mountain, when my phone buzzed. Mom's name on the screen. I almost let it go to voicemail. I was in the middle of a meeting with the city engineer and a private contractor, but something made me answer. Marcus? Her voice cracked immediately, and my stomach dropped. They won't let the pharmacy in. I'm at the gate. The driver says he has to leave in 10 minutes for his next delivery or he'll fall behind schedule and they won't open the gate and I don't know what to do. Her words tumbled out in a panicked rush and I could hear the tremor beneath them, the one that appeared when her anxiety spiked, which the cardiologist had warned could trigger arrhythmia episodes. "Mom, slow down," I said, standing up from the conference table, ignoring the annoyed looks from the contractor. "Take a breath. Where are you exactly?" "I'm sitting on the curb by the gate. It's hot." The driver tried calling the HOA, but no one answered. "Marcus, I need my medication. I'm coming right now." "Stay on the phone with me." I grabbed my jacket and laptop, muttered an apology to my boss, and basically sprinted to the parking garage. As I drove, Mom explained what Miguel had told her: the suspended vendor status, the application process, the 10 to 14-day wait. With every detail, my anger crystallized into something cold and sharp. "This is Patricia," I said, more to myself than Mom. "This is retaliation. She wouldn't do this over medication," Mom said, but her voice held no conviction. She knew better. We both did. I called the HOA office while driving north on I-17, going well over the speed limit, hazards flashing, voicemail, called Patricia's personal cell phone. Straight to voicemail, her mailbox was full, which seemed convenient, called the guard gate directly, and Jorge answered immediately. "Mr. Webb," he said before I could speak. "Sir, I'm so sorry. I've been trying to reach someone at the office for 40 minutes. I have your mother here, and I can see she's distressed, but my instructions are very clear. Jorge, this is an elderly woman with a heart condition. Her medication is critical. You're telling me there's no emergency override? Not according to my manual, sir. Mrs. Cunningham updated the protocols last week. All vendor access requires current approved status, no exceptions, even for medical... Even for medical? I repeated, incredulous. Jorge, that can't be legal. I'm just following the rules, sir. If you want to file an appeal, you can submit. I don't want to file anything. I want you to open the gate and let the pharmacy van in. Now." There was agonizing silence. When Jorge spoke again, his voice dropped almost to a whisper. "Mr. Webb, between you and me, I think this is wrong. But if I override Mrs. Cunningham's directive without authorization, I'll be fired. I've got 3 kids and a mortgage. I'm sorry." He meant it. I could hear the genuine distress in his voice, and I realized with sickening clarity that Patricia had created a system where even decent people became complicit through fear. "Understood," I said through clenched teeth. "Don't do anything that risks your job. This isn't on you." By the time I reached Desert Springs, normally a 35-minute drive that I'd made in 23 minutes, the pharmacy van was gone. I pulled up to the gate to find Mom sitting on the concrete curb in the shade of the guard booth, arms wrapped around herself despite the climbing heat. She looked smaller, somehow, diminished, and when she looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes, something inside me snapped. Not explosively, coldly, like ice cracking under pressure. This wasn't just HOA harassment anymore. This was endangerment. This was abuse. I helped Mom to her feet. She was shaking, partially from stress, partially from the heat she wasn't built to handle anymore, and guided her to my truck, where I blasted the AC. Jorge watched from the booth, miserable, but silent. And then, as I was settling Mom into the passenger seat, a white Lexus SUV rolled past the exit lane. Patricia Cunningham behind the wheel, oversized sunglasses, didn't even slow down, but she saw us. I know she did, because she smiled that same practiced smile I'd seen 100 times and gave a small wave before accelerating towards Saguaro Ridge Drive. She'd driven right past my 7-8-year-old mother sitting on a curb in distress and didn't stop. Didn't offer help. Didn't show even a flicker of human decency. Just waved like we were neighbors chatting over a fence instead of casualties of her power trip. That wave casual, dismissive, entitled, burned itself into my memory. In that moment, I made a decision. Not a hot-headed, impulsive one, but a cold calculation about how far I was willing to go to stop this woman from hurting anyone else the way she'd just hurt my mother. I drove Mom home, got her inside where it was cool, and immediately called Dr. Rashida Patel, her cardiologist at Banner Heart Institute. Explained the situation, the delayed medication, the stress event. Doctor, Patel's response was immediate and professional, but I could hear the concern underneath. Get her to take yesterday's dose if she still has it. Monitor her blood pressure every 2 hours. And I'm putting in an emergency prescription to a different pharmacy, Walgreens on Baseline Road. They'll have it ready in 20 minutes. If she shows any signs of irregular heartbeat, rapid pulse, or chest discomfort, call 911 immediately. The emergency delivery from Walgreens worked, but it cost $187 out of pocket because it wasn't through her regular pharmacy's insurance coordination, and the stress had already taken its toll. Mom's blood pressure was elevated for the rest of the day. That night, she barely touched dinner, just sat in Dad's old chair staring at the TV without seeing it. I sat down at my computer and spent the next 3 hours documenting every detail. Timestamps, phone call logs, the names of everyone I'd spoken with, Jorge's explanation of the new protocols, Patricia's drive-by indifference. I recorded a video statement with Mom with her permission and with Dr. Patel's medical notes authorizing the disclosure for legal purposes, explaining what had happened and how it made her feel. I was scared, Mom said into the camera, voice still shaky. Not just because of the medication, but because I realized that in my own community, where I've lived for 15 years, I'm not safe. If they can do this over medication, what else can they do? I saved everything to an encrypted cloud drive with multiple backups because I had the distinct feeling I was going to need it. Then I opened my email and wrote to Veronica Mills, the HOA attorney I'd consulted with weeks earlier but hadn't officially retained because her fees were steep, and I'd been hoping to resolve things through official complaints. The subject line read, "Emergency situation, retaliatory elder abuse with medical endangerment, need immediate legal intervention." I attached all the documentation and pressed send at 11:47 p.m. Her response came at 6:23 a.m. the next morning. "This crosses every legal and ethical line. I'm taking your case pro bono on the civil side, and I'm reporting this to Adult Protective Services and the Arizona Attorney General's office. Patricia Cunningham just ended her own reign. Call me at 8 a.m. But we weren't the only ones documenting. Unbeknownst to me, Patricia had hired a private investigator to follow me, photograph my movements, and compile a dossier of perceived violations. I found out when she filed a restraining order request claiming I'd threatened her safety and was stalking her property. The court hearing was surreal. February 22nd, 2025, Maricopa County Courthouse, Judge Elizabeth Torres presiding. Patricia showed up in a cream-colored suit, makeup perfect, playing the victim role with Oscar-worthy commitment. She claimed I'd driven past her house menacingly, sent her threatening messages through the Facebook group, and created an atmosphere of intimidation. Her evidence? Photos of my truck on public streets near her house streets I drove regularly because they led to the community exit, screenshots of Facebook posts where I'd called her leadership authoritarian, true statements, not threats. Veronica dismantled her case piece by piece. She presented the medication incident timeline, the escalating violation notices correlated with my complaints, Patricia's own emails showing selective enforcement patterns. Then came the smoking gun, Donald Marsh's financial audit, which revealed Patricia had embezzled $89,000 from HOA funds over 18 months. The restraining order request was denied. Judge Torres looked at Patricia with barely concealed disgust. "Mrs. Cunningham, this appears to be retaliatory litigation. I'm warning you now, abuse of the court system will have consequences." But Patricia wasn't done. As we left the courthouse, she turned to me in the hallway, smile sharp as a blade. "You think you've won something?" she said quietly. You have no idea what's coming." She was right. 3 days later, the HOA filed a lawsuit against me personally, claiming defamation, harassment, and interference with HOA operations. They were seeking $250,000 in damages. It was legally baseless but strategically brilliant, the kind of lawsuit designed not to win but to drain resources and crush opposition through sheer financial pressure. That's when I learned an important lesson. Fighting corruption isn't a sprint, it's a siege, and Patricia was prepared to burn everything down rather than surrender her kingdom. But so was I. Because this stopped being about HOA bylaws the moment she left my elderly mother crying on a curb while her medication sat unreachable, this became personal, and I was about to make it professional. We filed our counter lawsuit on March 1st, 2025. Veronica went scorched earth. Fraud, embezzlement, elder abuse, harassment, violation of Arizona's HOA statutes, intentional infliction of emotional distress. We named Patricia personally, the HOA board members, and the property management company she'd hired. Our filing was 143 pages long, with exhibits that included financial records, security footage, recorded phone calls, and testimonies from 62 residents. The local media got wind of it. Turned out a HOA president accused of embezzling while denying medicine to senior citizens made for a compelling story. Channel 12 News ran a segment on March 5th. By March 7th, it had gone viral. TikTok exploded with number HOA A Karen content. Someone made a remix of Patricia's courthouse quote set to ominous music. A Twitter thread documenting her violations against residents got 47,000 retweets. The Phoenix New Times ran a feature titled "The Tyrant of Desert Springs: How One Woman Turned a HOA into a Dictatorship." Patricia tried to control the narrative, posting a statement on the Desert Springs website claiming she was the victim of a coordinated smear campaign by disgruntled residents who refused to follow community standards. It backfired spectacularly when residents flooded the comments with their own stories, photos, and documentation. One particularly damning post came from a widow named Eleanor Martinez, who revealed that Patricia had fined her $3,800 for improper memorial decorations after she'd placed flowers on her front porch in Fader's memory of her late husband. The flowers were there for 3 days, 2 days beyond the HOA's 24-hour limit on temporary exterior decorations. The story made national news. Suddenly, Patricia Cunningham wasn't just a local problem, she was the face of HOA tyranny nationwide. Republican and Democratic state legislators alike started calling for HOA reform legislation. Patricia's response to mounting pressure? Double down. On March 14th, the HOA passed an emergency resolution implementing enhanced security measures, which really meant stricter gate protocols, mandatory vehicle registration with $50 annual fees, and random inspection authority for compliance verification. Translation: Patricia was giving herself permission to enter properties without warning. 23 residents immediately filed formal objections. The property management company quietly resigned, apparently unwilling to be associated with the sinking ship. 2 board members, including Patricia's longtime ally Margaret Stinson, abruptly resigned with terse statements citing personal reasons. Sources later told me Margaret had received a subpoena for financial records and panicked. The cracks in Patricia's fortress were showing, but she wasn't retreating. If anything, she became more aggressive, like a cornered animal. She filed motions to dismiss our lawsuit, motions to seal documents, motions to restrict media access to court proceedings. Every single one was denied. Meanwhile, Donald's financial audit was working through official channels. The Arizona Department of Real Estate launched a formal investigation on March 18th. The Arizona Attorney General's office followed with their own inquiry on March 22nd. Bank records were subpoenaed. Patricia's personal finances were now under a microscope. What they found was breathtaking in its audacity. Patricia hadn't just embezzled $89,000, it was closer to $127,000 over 2 years. She'd created fake invoices from her brother-in-law's company for work never performed. She'd approved her own salary increase from $0 to $45,000 annually without a board vote. She'd spent HOA funds on personal expenses, including her Lexus lease, her gym membership, and a timeshare in San Diego. But the most egregious discovery? She'd been charging individual residents administrative fees for processing violation appeals fees that weren't authorized by the bylaws and went directly to an account she controlled. It was, as Veronica put it, a masterclass in petty corruption. The deposition was scheduled for April 3rd, 2025. I wasn't allowed to attend, but Veronica briefed me afterward. She fell apart, Veronica said, almost sounding impressed, started confident, then got defensive, then hostile, then tearful. She claimed she deserved the money for her time and effort managing the community, said the residents were ungrateful. Blamed you personally for turning people against her. Did she admit to the embezzlement? Not in those words, but she admitted to every transaction. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. 3 days later, Patricia Cunningham was arrested. Maricopa County Sheriff's deputies showed up at her house at 6:47 a.m. on April 6th with a warrant. Charges included fraud, theft, forgery, and multiple counts of elder abuse related to the medication incident and other documented cases of denying services to elderly residents. Her mugshot, makeup-free, exhausted, utterly defeated, appeared on every local news outlet by noon. The Facebook group erupted in celebration, though I felt more exhausted than vindicated. The community held an emergency meeting on April 10th to dissolve the existing board and establish new leadership. Over 200 residents attended the largest turnout in Desert Springs history. The vote was unanimous. Patricia's board was out. A temporary steering committee was established, with Carl, the man who'd warned me to not push Patricia, serving as interim president. His first act was to freeze all pending violations and fines pending individual review. His second was to commission an independent audit of every HOA action taken during Patricia's tenure. The results, released in May, were damning. Over $340,000 in questionable expenditures, 1,247 violations issued with evidence of selective enforcement, and documentation of systematic intimidation tactics against residents who questioned board decisions. The civil lawsuit moved forward. Patricia's lawyers tried to negotiate a settlement, but we refused anything less than full accountability. The trial was scheduled for July 2025. Patricia pleaded guilty to criminal charges in June, accepting a plea deal, 18 months in prison, 5 years probation, full restitution of $127,000, and a lifetime ban from serving on any HOA board in Arizona. She also agreed to drop her counter-lawsuit and issue a formal apology to Desert Springs residents. The apology, when it came, was perfunctory and resentful, clearly written by her lawyer, but the words mattered less than the outcome. On July 12, 2025, Patricia Cunningham reported to Arizona State Prison Complex in Perryville. The woman who'd ruled Desert Springs like a fiefdom was now inmate number 287463, wearing tan instead of beige, her kingdom reduced to an 8x10 cell. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Desert Springs began to heal slowly. The new board implemented transparent budgeting, reduced the bylaws from 247 pages to 43, and established a resident grievance process with actual oversight. Fines were reduced to reasonable levels. The approved plant list was expanded to include native desert landscaping. Mom's cacti were suddenly compliant without changing a thing. The gate vendor policy was revised to allow medical and emergency services without restriction. But the most significant change was cultural. Residents started talking to each other again, organizing neighborhood barbecues, forming committees not to enforce rules but to improve community life. The fear that had hung over Desert Springs for 2 years dissipated like morning fog in the Arizona sun. Mom's health improved once the stress lifted. She started gardening again, planting new barrel cacti in Dad's memory. I stayed on as an unofficial advisor to the new board, using my engineering background to help plan sustainable drainage and landscaping improvements, the kind Patricia had claimed to care about but never actually addressed. In August, the civil lawsuit settled. The HOA's insurance paid out $890,000, distributed among the 127 residents who'd been demonstrably harmed by Patricia's actions. Mom received $23,000 compensation for stress, medical disruption, and years of unjust fines. We used part of it to install solar panels on her house, another violation Patricia would have hated but which now made perfect sense for an Arizona home. I framed the final settlement document and hung it in my home office, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Institutions only have the power we give them, and accountability only exists when people demand it. Patricia Cunningham thought she was untouchable because for 2 years she was, but that's the thing about tyrants, even small-scale ones, they depend on silence, fear, and apathy to maintain control. The moment people find their voices, the whole structure collapses. It's now October 2025, and life in Desert Springs has found a new rhythm. The community entrance has new landscaping done by a legitimately hired company with transparent billing, featuring beautiful native plants that actually thrive in our climate. The gate guard, Jorge, still works there, but seems visibly happier, no longer forced to be Patricia's enforcer. He waves when I drive through, and I wave back. Mom's medication is delivered without incident, her gate code works perfectly, and nobody's measuring her mailbox height. The Facebook group still exists, but has transformed into something positive, neighbors sharing recommendations, organizing community events, and occasionally sharing nostalgic memes about the Patricia era with the dark humor of people who've survived something together. I still drive past Patricia's old house sometimes. A young family bought it in August after it sat on the market for months. Apparently, the association with its former owner had tanked its value. They've painted the front door a cheerful turquoise, replaced the aggressively manicured lawn with desert landscaping, and installed a tire swing in the front yard. It looks nothing like Patricia's fortress anymore, and that feels right. As for Patricia herself, she'll be eligible for parole in 9 months with good behavior. I don't spend much time thinking about her anymore, but occasionally I wonder if she's learned anything, or if she'll just find another community to terrorize once she's released. People like that don't usually change, they just get more careful about getting caught. But that's not my problem anymore. My problem now is simpler. Enjoying my morning coffee on Mom's back patio, watching the sunrise paint the desert gold and red, listening to the birds, feeling the dry heat. That means another Arizona day is beginning. No violation notices, no gate codes mysteriously failing, no clipboard-wielding tyrant measuring the gap between my trash bins. Just peace, quiet, and the freedom that comes from standing up when it mattered most. Sometimes people ask me if it was worth it. The stress, the legal fees, the months of battle against someone who seemed determined to destroy anyone who challenged her. The answer is always the same. I didn't do it to win. I did it because Mom was crying on a curb while her medication sat blocked at a gate, and someone needed to say, enough is enough. Everything else was just the natural consequence of refusing to accept unacceptable behavior. In the end, that's what accountability looks like. Not a dramatic Hollywood moment where the villain is vanquished, but the slow, grinding work of documentation, organization, and refusal to be intimidated. It's boring, it's exhausting, and sometimes it feels hopeless. But it works because people like Patricia only win when we let them. The day we decided to stop letting her reign was already over. We just had to see it through. Now I'm back at work, designing drainage systems and reviewing civil plans, using my expertise to build things rather than tear them down. Mom's thriving. Her garden is full of Dad's cacti and new growth, and Desert Springs is finally living up to its name, a place where people can actually live in peace. And somewhere in Perryville, Patricia Cunningham is learning that rules apply to everyone, even the people who think they're above them. Maybe especially those people? I keep that first violation notice she sent Mom, the one about the non-conforming desert landscaping, in a drawer in my office. Sometimes I take it out and reread it, marveling at the audacity, the pettiness. the casual cruelty of someone who thought a barrel cactus was a threat to neighborhood consistency. It reminds me why this mattered. Not because of HOA bylaws or legal precedent, but because small tyrannies ignored become big ones over time. Because people like Mom, decent, hard-working people who just want to live quietly in their homes, deserve better than to be terrorized by petty authoritarians with clipboards. And because sometimes the only thing standing between abuse and accountability is one person saying, "No, I won't accept this," and refusing to back down even when the cost is high. That's the real lesson of Patricia Cunningham in Desert Springs. You don't need to be a hero to stand up to bullies. You just need to be stubborn enough to outlast them and brave enough to start. Everything else follows. The sun is setting now over the Estrella Mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that no HOA-approved color palette could ever capture. Mom and I are sitting on her back patio with iced tea, watching the desert come alive in the cooling evening air. She's talking about planting new flowers in spring, maybe even expanding Dad's cactus garden into the space where Patricia tried to force Bermuda grass. I'm listening, relaxed in a way I haven't been in months, and thinking that this quiet evening with Mom in her home on her terms is exactly what I fought for. Not victory, but peace. Not revenge, but justice. Not a kingdom, just a home. And honestly, that's worth more than any embezzled HOA fund, any perfect lawn, or any beige fortress on Saguaro Ridge Drive. Patricia's gone, her reign ended. Her legacy, nothing but cautionary tales shared on Facebook groups and legislative hearings about HOA reform. But Mom's still here, her cacti still thriving, and Desert Springs is finally, after years of fear and control, becoming an actual community again. Sometimes the good guys do win. It just takes a lot longer and costs a lot more than the movies suggest. But when you look at Mom smiling as she waters Dad's garden, free from the fear of violation notices and arbitrary fines, every single exhausting, infuriating, terrifying moment was worth it. Tomorrow, I'll go back to work. The new board will hold their monthly meeting, transparent and recorded, with actual resident input and reasonable decisions. Jorge will wave as I drive through the gate that now opens reliably for everyone. Life will continue, normal and peaceful, in the way it should have been all along. And Patricia Cunningham will be just a memory, a warning, and a reminder that no one is above accountability, not even the Queen of Desert Springs, not even when she thought her beige empire would last forever. Because nothing lasts forever except the desert, the mountains, and the stubborn determination of people who refuse to be pushed around. That's the real Arizona story, the one that matters more than any HOA drama. We don't quit, we don't back down, and we definitely don't let anyone tell us our cacti are non-conforming. They're survivors, adapted to thrive in harsh conditions with minimal resources, kind of like the rest of us. And if Patricia had understood that, maybe things would have turned out differently. But she didn't, so they didn't, and now here we are. Desert Springs healed, Mom safe, and the only empire left standing is the one built on genuine community instead of manufactured control. As night falls and the first stars appear over the desert, I raise my glass in a quiet toast to Dad's memory, to Mom's strength, to everyone who stood up when it mattered, and to the beautiful, stubborn, perfectly non-conforming barrel cacti that started this whole thing. May they grow tall, thrive long, and never, ever match Patricia Cunningham's approved plant list. The desert has its own rules, and they're the only ones that matter now.